On February 14th, 1929, 7 men were lined up against a brick wall in a Chicago garage and shot dead. No arrests were ever made. Everyone in the city knew who gave the order, but no one could ever prove it. The man behind it would go on to be one of the most powerful criminals in American history. And yet, in the end, the government didn't take him down for murder. They took him down for not filing his taxes. This is the story of Al Capone. Alphonse Capone was born in 1899 in Brooklyn, New York, the son of Italian immigrants. His father was a barber, his mother a seamstress, a hard-working, ordinary family with no ties to organized crime. But the neighborhood Capone grew up in told a different story. Brooklyn at the turn of the century was a battleground of street gangs, and by his early teens, Capone was already running with one of them. He dropped out of school at 14 after striking a teacher, and from there, the streets became his education. He fell under the mentorship of a small-time gangster named Johnny Torrio, a man who saw something useful in the tough, ambitious teenager. It was during this period that Capone picked up the scar that would define his public image. While working as a bouncer, he insulted a woman at a club. Her brother slashed his face 3 times. The press would later call him Scarface. Capone hated the nickname. In 1919, Johnny Torrio relocated to Chicago to help run the criminal operations of his uncle, Big Jim Colosimo. He sent for Capone soon after. The timing could not have been better. That same year, the United States passed the 18th Amendment, banning the sale of alcohol nationwide. Prohibition had begun, and with it, an entire black market was born almost overnight. Torrio and Capone moved quickly. When Colosimo resisted expanding into bootlegging, he was murdered. And while it was never proven, most historians believe Capone was involved. With Colosimo gone, Torrio took control of Chicago's underworld, and Capone became his right hand. Over the next few years, the 2 men built an empire. They didn't just sell illegal alcohol. They controlled breweries, distribution routes, speakeasies, gambling dens, and gave the Chicago police and politicians enough money to look the other way. By the mid-1920s, after Torrio was nearly killed in a rival attack and decided to retire, Capone took full control. He was 26 years old, and he ran the most profitable criminal organization in the country. At his height, Capone's organization was estimated to bring in over $100 million a year, an extraordinary sum for the 1920s. He controlled much of Chicago's South Side, owned hotels and nightclubs as fronts, and paid off police captains, judges, and city officials so thoroughly that he effectively had immunity from local law enforcement. But Capone wasn't just a criminal. He was a public figure. He gave generously to charities, funded soup kitchens during hard times, and was known to tip extravagantly. Many ordinary Chicagoans saw him less as a villain and more as a man who gave them what the government wouldn't: jobs, entertainment, and in some cases, food on the table during difficult years. He cultivated this image deliberately, giving interviews to newspapers and posing for photographs at baseball games. But behind that public charm was a man willing to use extreme violence to protect his territory. Rival gangs were a constant threat, and Capone's solution was rarely subtle. Which brings us back to February 14th, 1929, the day his men, dressed as police officers, executed 7 members of a rival gang in what became known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It shocked the nation, turned public opinion against him, and put him squarely in the crosshairs of federal authorities. Here's the problem federal investigators faced: Capone was nearly impossible to convict. Witnesses disappeared or refused to testify. Juries were intimidated. Police were on his payroll. So the government changed its approach entirely. Instead of chasing murder charges they couldn't make stick, federal agents went after something Capone had never bothered to hide: the fact that he'd never paid income tax on his criminal earnings. In 1931, Al Capone was convicted of tax evasion, not murder, not bootlegging, not racketeering. Tax evasion. He was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, and in 1934 he was transferred to Alcatraz, the most secure prison in the country, reserved for the most dangerous and high-profile inmates. By the time he was released in 1939, Capone was a different man. Years of untreated syphilis, contracted long before his imprisonment, had severely damaged his mental and physical health. The once feared crime boss who controlled an entire city spent his final years in declining health at his Florida estate, largely out of the public eye. He died in 1947 at just 48 years old. Al Capone never killed a man with his own hands in any case prosecutors could prove. He never robbed a bank. The empire he built was brought down not by the violence he was infamous for, but by a stack of paperwork. It's one of the strangest endings in American crime history. And it's exactly why his story still gets told, nearly a century later. If you want to understand how organized crime really worked behind the headlines, this channel is for you. Next week, we're looking at the mob informant who brought down an entire crime family from the inside. A story Hollywood has never quite gotten right. Subscribe so you don't miss it.